All right, what is an AMI?
Identity and access management.
That's correct. Anybody else want to take it?
That is correct.
Good. So IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. It is a web service that helps you securely control access to your AWS resources. So IAM allows you to create and manage users and groups, as well as allow or deny them access to AWS resources. That's good. Let's move on to the next one. What are IAM groups?
Collection of users put into a group for a specific task or a specific type of access.
That's good. That's correct. So IAM user group is a collection of IAM users. So user groups lets you specify permissions for multiple users, which can make it easier to manage the permissions for these users. That's good. Let's move on to the next one. What are the various levels of access that IAM users can have?
Admin level and user levels.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we have two programming level access. That is, one is a programmatic access and another one is AWS Management Console access. Do you remember this particular screen while creating a user?
Yes,
so the
sir.
first one, access key, if you select, you will have access to AWS resources through CLI, SDK, so that is software development kit, and APIs. Suppose you have selected the second one, the password AWS Management Console access, you will have access to the GUI. Either of them you can select or both of them you can select while creating a user. That's good. So here comes the next one. Is it possible to create a role to manage multiple resources? Example, a role created for EBS, that is Elastic Block Storage, can it be used for other services like maybe storage service, S3 simple storage service? Is it possible?
Yes, for a user, if he has access for all the storage access, then he can able to access.
That's good. That's correct. So the answer is yes. IAM provides several policy templates that can be selected to assign permission. So one such policy template is administrator access. So if you attach this template, if you attach this policy to the user or group, so they will have access to all these services because they fall under administrator access policy. Okay, let's proceed to the next question. What are IAM roles and IAM policies?
Our roles are like permissions and the policies are like how those permissions should be taken care.
Okay. Anyone else want to make an attempt?
Roles are provided for particular service wherein a particular user can maybe create a EC2 instance. So something like that. And policy is when a person, for restricting certain kind of access or giving only certain kind of access, which would define the policy.
All right. Okay. Good attempt. Let's check the answer. IAM roles control who has access to AWS resources. A role with no policy attached to it won't have any access to any of the AWS resources. Same time, IAM policies control the permissions to IAM identities such as users, groups, and roles. So these policies allow you to define what an identity can do and cannot do. That means we can attach a policy to a role which has been defined. For that, you can assign a policy. If no policy is attached, then that policy will not have any scope. All right. Okay, let's proceed to the next one. So how a root user is different from an IAM user?
A root user is one who has complete control over the entire environment. However, the IAM user can be restricted for basic access, or we can define the access as per requirement.
Okay. Anyone else want to make an attempt?
Yeah, a root user like an administrator for the role, and a user is the member of that role, member of that group.
Okay. All right. Good attempt. So here the root user is the account owner and is created when the AWS account is created. So root user will have access to entire AWS environment, and same time it will not have any policies attached to it. This is like a super user or a super administrator. So same time IAM user can be created by the AWS accounts root user or an IAM administrator. Suppose you have created an administrator account beneath your root user account. This administrator account or user can create other IAM users. So an IAM user will be able to perform tasks based on the policies that are attached. Good attempt. Let's move on to the next one. So what is the difference between a root user and an administrator user? We just checked upon a root user.
Yeah, root user like the entire AWS administrator, and administrator is he's strict with the role only, role administrator, not the entire AWS administrator.
Correct. Anyone
Administrator
else?
comes under root user. So root user will have complete access to the environment. However, administrator access can be restricted to certain areas or certain services.
That's correct. So the root user is the account owner and is created when the AWS account is created. A root user will have access to entire AWS environment. It will not have any policies attached to it. This we have just learned. Same time, AWS administrator user are created by the AWS root user to handle account administration tasks. So administrator user has certain limitations such as admin policies restrict them from accessing AWS billing and cost management. So being an administrator user, you cannot go and check the billing. What is the billing? How much bill has been generated? That you cannot see. And an admin user cannot create IAM policies with more privileges than they already have. Same time, IAM administrator user can create IAM policies, but cannot provide more privileges than whatever they have present. And also IAM administrator user cannot alter their own permission boundaries to allow access to restricted services. So these are the limitations. At the same time, administrator user cannot delete the AWS account. Okay, these are the limitations. This is the difference. Very good. Let's move on to the next one. So what are managed policies?
Manager policies are the policies that are implemented in the AWS roles.
Okay. Anyone else want to give a try?
Those are user-defined policies which are managed by root user.
Okay. All right. Let's check the answer. A managed policy is an IAM policy which is created and administered by AWS. Okay, there are so many default policies that are already provided, right? The policy templates. These default policy templates that are provided by AWS, and the same will be administered by AWS themselves. They are called managed policies. So AWS provides managed policies for common use cases based on job function like administrator access. say, for example, you have created a user, you have attached this policy called administrator access or support user or Amazon EC2 full access. So these policies, what you attach, they will have that particular IAM user will have complete access to that particular role, correct? So these policies are created by AWS. So those policies are called managed policy. All right, good attempt. Let's move on to the next one. So how user authentication is controlled in the IAM service? What are all the different types of authentication that we can see?
Multi-factor authentication.
Okay.
And passwords.
Okay, that's good. Anything else you can think of?
PIN number.
Okay, that's nice. We are going very close. How do you log into your AWS management console? You'll provide some information, right?
Through Windows
login?
authentication.
That's correct. That's correct. So these are all the authentication policies that will be used. To begin with, access keys, email ID and password that we use for our root user account to log in. That is one type of authentication. User ID and password, which is this, the IAM user, what you create, the user ID and the password, what you provide. That is another authentication. MFA, multi-factor authentication, and managed federated user. This topic we did not touch upon, but however, we can provide additional access for third-party softwares or vendors to log into your AWS console. That means the AWS management console, what you have, what you own, not only the IAM users that you create within the environment to access, you can also provide access to third-party tools or softwares, APIs, or even third-party companies, corporate companies. Say, for example, you are working for ABC Private Limited. You have created your AWS management account. You can allow employees of XYZ Private Limited company. Okay, so that feature is available. These are all some of the authentication that are provided. All right, so far so good. Let's move on to the next one. Name the 3 different ways a policy can be attached to IAM identities. I can just give you a hint. This is about while creating an IAM user, you have 3 ways to attach a policy. You will see that screen, correct? Can you recall?
While creating the users, I think we can add.
Correct.
We can
what
implement.
are the 3 different ways a policy can be attached? Yes, these policies can be attached at the time of creating the user or even at a later stage. We can do that. It is not mandatory. That has to be done at the same time. What are all the different ways of attaching a policy? All right, let's move on to the answer.
At the time of creating the groups, yeah.
Yeah, correct. So by adding a user to a group, that means this group is already having policies attached. Okay. Next is copying permission from the existing user to the new user what we are creating. That means that we are borrowing the policies that are attached to existing user. Those policies are attaching to the new user. The last option is attaching policy directly to the user. All right, with this we'll be concluding this quiz. Thank you for your participation. We will have a lot more questions in the upcoming sessions.